faithfully delivering value and interpreting the world's great books. Oh, hello, this is Sally Talks Books. I'm Wu Haiyun, the book interpreter. Today, I'm introducing you to a book called The White Road, with the subtitle A Pilgrimage Through East and West. In the eyes of many Westerners, porcelain is China, meaning Chinese porcelain. This thing, so ordinary to Chinese people, has fascinated countless Westerners for centuries. It was thought to be a magical substance that could stop poison from working. It nearly emptied the treasury of a German king and almost became a token of friendship between a French king and a Qing emperor. From Venetian merchants in the 14th century to the German Nazi Party last century, Westerners' love for porcelain has endured. This book, The White Road, is all about porcelain, the grand legendary stories from China to the world, interwoven with adventure and conflict, invention and trade, science and magic, wealth and power. The author of this book is a British man named Edmund de Wall, a world-class ceramic artist whose porcelain works have been exhibited in many famous museums worldwide. Meanwhile, de Wall is also an excellent writer, praised by the New Yorker magazine as a master at telling stories about objects. You could say de Wall is a rare contemporary author who excels in both porcelain art and human history, making him perfect to tell porcelain's story. The main thread of The White Road is de Wall's pilgrimage journey for porcelain. This journey-like narrative, Jingdezhen in China passes through Dresden in Germany and arrives at Plymouth in England. By visiting these three porcelain capitals, de Wall depicts porcelain, a glorious journey of its development and evolution from China to the West. In this journey, porcelain is the perfect object humans relentlessly pursue in a fleeting world. It's like a prism refracting the twists and turns over centuries on the path of modern Sino-Western exchange. The Times book reviewer's evaluation of The White Road is about the many meanings of porcelain for the modern world. This book is definitely the best work I've ever read. Now, let's embark on this exploration journey of porcelain with de Wall. We'll uncover what the mysteries of Chinese porcelain are, and what kind of fascination has it sparked in the Western world. To unlock the secrets of porcelain, how did European nations exhaust all their efforts? Finally, what new significance did Westerners give to this beautiful artifact? First, let's explore the mysteries of Chinese porcelain and how it triggered centuries of fascination in the West. Porcelain's raw materials are potence and kaolin minerals. They fuse at high temperatures to create solid, non-porous vessels. Over a millennium ago, the Chinese mastered mixing potence and kaolin in different proportions to produce diverse porcelain. Jingdezhen became the porcelain capital during the Song dynasty, largely due to its abundant reserves of potence and kaolin. Of course, human craftsmanship may be more crucial than natural resources. A seemingly ordinary porcelain piece embodies the spirit of progress passed down through generations of artisans. In de Wall's somewhat emotional account, Jingdezhen is a city of skill and knowledge with an industry complexity surpassing all other human endeavors. Workers there have 23 distinct roles, including 6 types of painters and 3 kiln loading specialists, 3 types of firing experts, and even support tasks like mixing clay and grinding pigments have strict standards. Hundreds of criteria exist just for grading potence and kaolin quality. However, what struck de Wall most in Jingdezhen wasn't the finished porcelain, but the shards. Firing porcelain demands exact conditions. Cracks and warping often occur. Thus, the millennial porcelain capital Jingdezhen has left hills piled with porcelain fragments. De Wall, in the book, he describes his feelings upon first seeing those porcelain shards in Jingdezhen. He wrote, "This is the moment I've dreamed of for years. I held it reverently, as if I had found Christ's Holy Grail." Of course, de Wall is far from the first Westerner obsessed with porcelain. In 1291, Marco Polo brought the first Chinese porcelain to Venice, igniting Europe's passion for it. Um, Marco Polo returned with a small gray-green jar, now preserved in St. Mark's Basilica in Venice. In his travels, he specifically wrote of a city producing porcelain bowls, varying sizes, exquisitely beautiful. For one Venetian silver coin, you could buy 3 fine bowls, their delicate charm almost unimaginable. This is the first mention of porcelain in Western literature. In Westerners' eyes, it was perfect to the point of being unbelievable. Back then, Western nobles used items made of gold, silver, or marble, mostly heavy, while porcelain was light, making a crisp sound when tapped gently and glowing slightly in sunlight. It became a treasure coveted by royalty and nobles, appearing in the inventories of kings and popes, and on the gift lists of diplomats. In Florence, a rumor started that porcelain cups could stop poison from working. Meanwhile, Venice coined the term porcelain disease to describe nobles' obsessive fascination with porcelain. Unlike ordinary longing, this porcelain disease was clearly a chronic illness. Europeans suffered from it for centuries, with little hope of recovery. In the 1680s, a Jesuit missionary who lived in Jingdezhim for 40 years brought back 167 crates of porcelain to France, exhibited at Versailles, astonishing the entire Western world. The French king even built a pavilion called Trianon for his mistress, Madame de Montespan, 1 mile from Versailles. The ceiling of that palace was painted with Chinese birds, and even the bricks featured Eastern-style luxurious patterns. Sadly, they lacked enough Chinese porcelain, so they used painted ceramics from the Netherlands, modern-day Holland and Belgium, and French ceramics to fake it. The quality of these painted ceramics and pottery wasn't good. Exposed to wind and sun, the glaze cracked and peeled, and tiles soon fell off walls. This only deepened Europeans' awe and longing for Chinese porcelain. Of course, while obsessed with porcelain, Westerners also kept probing its secrets and techniques, but their quests were always mystical. For example, in the mid-16th century, an Italian astrologer wrote that porcelain was made from a juice that congealed underground, brought from the distant east. Another writer claimed porcelain was made by grinding eggshells and fish scales into powder, mixing with water, shaping into vases, burying them for 100 years, then digging them up to sell. Needless to say, such ideas couldn't produce real porcelain. In short, for over 400 years, the West was obsessed with Chinese porcelain but never cracked its secret. So how did the Western world gradually figure out how to make porcelain? Now, let me tell you this story. It happened in the late 17th to early 18th century, featuring Western royalty, missionaries, alchemists, philosophers, merchants, and adventurers. We start with France. Actually, among Western nations, the French had the best chance to crack porcelain's mystery first. In the 16th and 17th centuries, French Catholic Jesuits came to China, and some reached Jingdezhen. In Jingdezhen, these missionaries acted like industrial spies, closely observing porcelain making and writing reports to Europe. However, the French didn't seriously study or use that information. By the mid-17th century, Louis XIV, known as the Sun King, ascended the throne. This French king believed there was an easy way to get the porcelain recipe. That method was diplomacy. Louis XIV was fascinated by China's Emperor Kangxi, thinking friendship would secure the porcelain secret. To that end, Louis had missionaries bring countless novelties to the Qing court, like clocks playing Chinese melodies and perspective landscape paintings. Missionaries also brought sextants, astrolabes, telescopes, and taught Kangxi geometry and astronomy. Louis hoped this knowledge would trade for Qing craftsmanship, enabling mutual sharing of arts and sciences. But though Kangxi diligently studied Western knowledge, he didn't reciprocate, foiling Louis's diplomacy. Afterward, the French settled for substitutes, adding glass powder to clay to mimic porcelain. Called soft paste porcelain, it scraped off easily and sounded fake when tapped. Of course, the French didn't fully abandon true porcelain. Their closest attempt involved mathematician Ehrenfried Tschirnhaus. Tschirnhaus believed porcelain's greatest mystery was how this hard solid could transmit light. So the mathematician tried to study its making through light reflection and refraction. Sadly, after years of research in France, Tschirnhaus never achieved a breakthrough. Now to Germany. It was Germans who created the first Western porcelain, relying on a trinity of monarchy, science, and alchemy. In April 1694, Saxony welcomed its new king, Augustus II. Nicknamed the Strong, he possessed immense physical power and extravagant indulgence. He had countless mistresses and an astonishing number of illegitimate children. Yet even such formidable vitality couldn't resist porcelain's allure. Augustus the Strong loved porcelain obsessively and spared no expense acquiring it. His most famous deed was trading 600 Saxon dragoons to Prussia for over 100 exquisite Chinese porcelains. In a letter, Augustus confessed to having porcelain sickness, adding that once obsession becomes disease, satisfaction is impossible. You always crave more. By his death, he owned 35,788 porcelain pieces, the largest Western collection then. Throughout his life, Augustus bought porcelain with madness. However, the East-West porcelain trade was monopolized by the Dutch East India Company. This middleman charged huge markups. Augustus knew but paid anyway, his love for porcelain too strong. But even the deepest treasury couldn't sustain such spending. As coffers drained, Augustus grew more determined to unlock porcelain's secret. He built a Dresden laboratory called the Gold House. Europeans then saw porcelain as so miraculous it must be produced like alchemy. The Gold House hosted diverse explorers, natural philosophers, scientists, alchemists, and mining experts. Key among them was Tschirnhaus, bringing his porcelain theories from France to Dresden, where his experiments often turned precious minerals into lumps, even rendering gold worthless. But Tschirnhaus kept experimenting day after day, relentlessly. What sustained him was his own perseverance and, of course, King Augustus's wealth. And speaking of another key figure, it's quite fantastical. In 1701, rumor spread in Germany that a 19-year-old boy named Betge discovered a philosopher's stone and produced gold in front of reliable witnesses. This news quickly spread beyond Germany, alarming monarchs across Europe. It's said that more people competed for Betsker than for Helen of Troy, and Augustus was one step ahead, grabbing Betsker and sending him to the Gold House. Here, the young alchemist Butger met the elderly mathematician Tschirnhaus. In Tschirnhaus's view, this young man, though seemingly eccentric, had a magical intuition for materials and could be a great partner. So he successfully persuaded Becker not to focus solely on alchemy, but also to explore porcelain making. After all, at that time, porcelain was more precious than gold, and in the Gold House, Bodger neither produced gold nor succeeded in making porcelain. Augustus was furious and moved Böttger from Dresden to a secret laboratory in Meissen, 15 miles away. Tschirnhaus, eager for wealth, followed him to that laboratory, half underground, windows nearly brick up, with 24 furnaces of various sizes burning day and night, the air filled with toxic substances. It was in this wretched environment that Böttger and Tschirnhaus lived and worked together day and night, guarding the furnaces and testing various materials. In 1766, the old and young duo discovered something upon opening the kiln. It had a fine texture, reddish-brown color, looked stunningly beautiful, and felt cool to the touch. They summed up their experience, doubled their efforts, and their work pace became more frenzied. They checked the kiln every half hour, often burning their hair and suffering endless large blisters on their feet. 2 years later, on October 9th, 1708, they fired a translucent white vessel. 2 days later, Boston reported to King Augustus that he had made porcelain. And on that very day, Chernhouse passed away, finally, 417 years after Marco Polo brought porcelain to Europe. Germany became the first in the Western world to unlock porcelain's mystery. That brand new white substance was called better porcelain. Augustus established a porcelain factory in Meissen, where Butger and Chernhouse made their breakthrough, the first porcelain factory in the West. And then, after Meissen porcelain emerged, other European rulers wanted their own factories, luring away Meissen artisans with better offers. Soon the recipe spread across the continent. However, in Europe, one king remained aloof with little interest in porcelain: England's. While German Meissen produced lightweight, flawless, white sets, England settled for soft paste porcelain, lacking hardness and luster, easily cracked. Soon England would have its porcelain story, but it wouldn't involve royalty. If France's porcelain quest was a romantic king comedy, Germany's a fantasy film, England's was a classic coming-of-age novel. The protagonist of this coming-of-age story was William Cookworthy, who came to London at 15 to apprentice at a pharmacy. At 21, he completed his training and moved to Plymouth, a port city, opening his own pharmacy. One day, Cookworthy read a book about China and became fascinated by its chapter on Chinese porcelain. It contained 2 letters sent from Jingdezhen 20 years earlier by a Jesuit priest. The letters revealed porcelain was made by combining 2 minerals, kaolin and potency. This accidental reading transformed pharmacist Cookworthy's life forever. Cookworthy began riding around Plymouth, searching for legendary kaolin clay. On hillsides, he dug soil and broke weathered rocks into his sack, hunting for potency. When not digging, he studied porcelain composition, developing a peculiar habit: smashing ceramics to listen to the fracture sound and examine broken edges. Finally, in Cornwall near Plymouth, Cookworthy found a coarse salt. Testing confirmed it was pétence, giving porcelain its translucency and warm texture. Who would have thought this mineral Europe sought for centuries existed abundantly in Cornwall's countryside? Soon Cookworthy identified kaolin, the white clay locals used to repair water pumps. He mixed pure kaolin and pétence in equal parts. Fired, they produced luminous white porcelain. On March 14, 1768, Cookworthy fired the first apple green teacup, Britain's initial genuine porcelain. Sounds incredible, doesn't it? Just an ordinary Englishman, no kings or drama, achieved this alone. But let's not assume Cookworthy's path was smooth. During his porcelain research, he endured losing his wife and daughter, tasting life's bitterest sorrows. De Waal suggests Cookworthy's incomprehensible porcelain obsession was an escape from pain. His endless quest was how he turned toward the world, avoiding life's fractures. Now, we've seen how Europe's trio, France, Germany, England, exhausted themselves cracking porcelain's mystery. By the early 18th century, Westerners finally mastered porcelain making. Next, let's explore how Westerners reinvented and expanded porcelain's meaning after unlocking its secrets. First, perhaps most crucially, came porcelain's industrialization and commercialization. Here we must credit the British, especially Josiah Wedgwood, a ceramic entrepreneur. Wedgwood was exceptionally clever and decisive. Having a wooden prosthetic leg, he still moved with remarkable speed. Revolutionary innovation, he integrated porcelain into industrial production. Wedgwood's ceramic factory in Stoke-on-Trent became the ceramic city by the early 1800s. Chimneys crowded the skyline, smog enveloped everything, smoke blackened the air. People couldn't even see the sun, all forced to serve porcelain production. The entire city existed to produce more porcelain at maximum speed. Previously, only the elite could enjoy handcrafted fine porcelain. Now, ordinary folks could use porcelain too. Wedgwood had sharp marketing vision, proposing different types and colors for different markets, like agate, green, and other colored glazes. for those who loved gaudy, cheap items. Um, Cream color was high grade, suited for the upper middle class, and black was the highest grade, timeless. Wedgwood also noted that defective pieces from production shouldn't be discarded but repurposed. For example, sanding warped vase bases flat or securing unstable pieces to new bases with screws, then selling them cheaply as seconds. In short, Wedgwood was instrumental in democratizing and commercializing porcelain. The second change Westerners brought was formal innovation. We know China excels at porcelain, but our pieces were mostly vessels, wine pots, rice bowls, cups, plates, bottles. Once mastering the technique, Westerners began making decorative objects, especially animal and human figurines. Here, new techniques merged with their ancient sculptural tradition. Ironically, Europe's finest porcelain sculptures emerged from Nazi Germany. In 1935, three SS members planned porcelain worthy of the Nazi Party, founding a factory called Allah. The plan gained full support from SS leader Himmler, who funded it generously from his private office. After funding, the factory moved to Dachau concentration camp to ensure ample labor. Himmler insisted Allah produce only highly valuable artistic porcelain, avoiding vulgar kitsch. During the Third Reich, systematic gifting practice, Aulic gifts for birthdays, weddings, or childbirths. Aulic's animal figurines were especially popular. Does, fawns, fox cubs, German shepherds, all available. Perhaps the most famous animal figurine depicted Prussian King Frederick the Great on horseback. The horse's front hooves raised high, tail flowing, standing powerfully independent. Frederick's weight balanced on just two slender legs, extraordinary craftsmanship surpassing even Meissen. Hitler greatly admired this piece, ordering 100 copies, one for himself, 99 for his inner circle. Alcala also produced human figurines. These figures were young and athletic, girls just released, mothers with infants, athletes, and stormtroopers. The most coveted figurine among Nazis was called Der Bauträger, the Builder. This ceramic youth was muscular, bare-chested, and radiating confidence. You couldn't buy it, only Nazi elites like Reinhard Heydrich, head of the SS security service, had one. Notably, Alak human figures were white braised or unglazed biscuit porcelain, per Himmler's orders. Why? Because Nazis saw white porcelain as embodying German spirit and imperial purity. Its marble-like whiteness evoked Greek sculptures, perfection itself, thus implying the Third Reich's succession to the Holy Roman Empire, and obviously white porcelain figures aligned with Nazi Aryan supremacy ideology. Yet, Nazis weren't alone in loving white porcelain. Many Westerners adore white porcelain, unlike Chinese preferences. Chinese value colorful decorations. Even simplicity means blue and white porcelain. But Westerners often prefer pure white, like Meissen's signature white cups. Britain's porcelain pioneer, Cookworthy, also obsessed over white porcelain, partly for religious reasons. Dewall writes, "For Christians, white is the bright cloud on the horizon, heralding the Lord's coming. White helps people distinguish essentials from trivialities. It's the color of wisdom and revelation." Author Dewall is also a white porcelain enthusiast. We can guess this from the book's title, The White Road. In it, Dewall tirelessly expresses his special devotion to white porcelain. He says, white porcelain has an allure that completely immerses him, like white light rising from the sea, only to be swept away, or wind stirring white dust that swirls before settling. He says, he keeps making white porcelain to repeatedly set out, find his path, and wind his way back to himself. Dewall's romantic, fanatical tone when describing porcelain is moving, reminding us that porcelain feelings are ultimately subjective and personal. Porcelain may be a wisdom-filled creation or world-shaping force, but essentially it's an object of fascination that reveals our tender yet resilient sides, like all beloved things. As the saying goes, love knows no origin, yet grows ever deeper. All right, that concludes our journey through the White Road, a pilgrimage through East and West. Reading notes are below the audio. See you tomorrow.